What's up, you guys? Chet Guthrie, the Dream Poet here, coming to you all with a very special feature vlog. Anyway, as you all know, last few videos I've been doing my Haunt Season series. Well, as of the release of this video, October 1st, my book, Ghosts and Mysteries of St. Augustine, Florida, has hit Amazon shelves. Anyway, guys, this is the third book in my series, if y'all have kept up with what I've been writing. My first book is Ghosts and Mysteries of Bradley County, my hometown of Cleveland, Tennessee. Then you also have my second book, which I published over the spring and summer seasons, which was Ghosts and Mysteries of the Southern Cherokee National Forest. Well, this book, Ghosts and Mysteries of St. Augustine, Florida, is my love letter to the ancient city. If y'all know a thing or two about history, you all will know that St. Augustine, Florida is the oldest continuously inhabited city in the United States by Europeans. They predate the Pilgrims by about 57 years. I'd say around that time. But anyway, guys, I figured for this video, I would do a feature on my book. I figured I'd read a few stories. And like I said, if y'all want to get a book, it is in the description box below. It'll take you to the Amazon links, my books. Now, this book, compared to my last two books, is slightly higher in value. But as you all can see, it's got about 125 pages. And it's higher quality than the first two books. And also, I illustrated it this time. I like it. Anyway, it's very fitting. But out of the stories that I will be reading tonight, you guys, for the special vlog that is Ghosts and Mysteries of St. Augustine, Florida, I think I will start out with Something Evil in the Apartment Upstairs. Now, this is the old British pub that's in St. Augustine. It's right across the river, right across the Bridge of Lions. And my former employer, Ghost Augustine, they used to give tours and investigations in the upstairs area, the upstairs apartment. And whatever was upstairs was a very violent entity. And I covered this in my book, which, let me get to where it is. And I will read you all this. It was an actual case that happened. So anyway, let's get to it. Ghosts can't hurt you. It's an old saying from skeptics, and often the phrase you will hear from a parent comforting their child if you find yourself on a ghost tour. And a majority of the time, it's true. Much like the living, spirits will not attack someone unless provoked. However, there are some entities that will inflict pain on the innocent simply for entering their domain. There was once a location at Ghost Augustine used to take its guests to had such an entity. The spirit was so violent that some guides would refuse to go any further than the back door entrance to let people in. The place was a bar called the British Pub. It was a 2-story building with a bar on the first floor and an empty apartment on the second. Most of the activities seemed to come from the empty apartment. However, it's reported that bartenders experienced an intense heaviness and the feeling of being watched. For some servers, the feeling became so intense that they had to get out of the building as soon as possible. Other servers have said that they have watched shot glasses fly across the room and other items crashing off the shelves by an invisible force. The incident involved a cloth. One incident involved a cloth that sat on a table in the apartment upstairs. When the servers locked up the second floor for the night, the cloth would be sitting there as they left, but during the opening shift, the rag would be laying there on the floor. This happened twice. In 2010, the building was owned by two men named Mike and Dave, who were business partners, but they didn't get along. In 2012, after a heated argument, Mike went outside to cool off. The man took his time to compose himself and as he began to feel level-headed, as he went to the back door to go back inside, the man felt an overwhelming pain in his chest, and his world went dark. Mike had had a massive heart attack and died. Mike was the only person known to have passed away at the British pub in modern times. However, there is a little girl named Sarah who roams the halls, as well as a little boy named Leon. There is a man named Keckler and a woman named Victoria. These spirits tend to communicate with the guests and visitors with ease and are harmless. But the violent one who refuses to give its name is an entity to be wary of. The entity first revealed itself after investigating the apartment for 4 months, and had first been seen as a shadow gliding from one room to the other. Communication with this spirit felt life-threatening, as its voice sounded feral. Guests and guides alike would feel a burning sensation on their chest. When the clothing was lifted, there would be a consistent 3 scratch marks running down the person's torso. At this point, some guides refused to even enter the building. Their warning to guests that if they felt threatened during their investigation, it was fine to leave. Many people complained of chest pains, while others became so overcome with emotion that they burst through the back door never to return. For some, they believed this entity to be a demon. When the thing appeared, it was as if other spirits in the building were afraid to talk with investigators over the REM pod. Others say that this entity was a contributing factor to Mike's death in 2010, but it couldn't be proven. Regardless if it happened, however, the entity proved that it had the ability to kill. In 2017, there was a guide referred to as Rick. Rick gave tours on Ghost Augustine's Shadow Shuttle, which is a tour bus that takes its guests to haunted locations surrounding the old city. Rick had been in attendance for a month when he reached out to a fellow guide one night after leaving the pub. The man was deeply shaken as he recalled one of his guests taking a photo of a black shadow. Rick then proceeded to antagonize the spirit. After leaving to go out to another spot on the tour, one of the tourists replayed an EVP of Rick shouting into thin air. As he yelled, another voice can be heard. It sounded guttural and unnatural. Effing stop. Effing stop. Effing stop. Rick, you have to go back there and say you're sorry, his fellow guide responded. I can't, he said, still shaken. I told you that spirit you don't want to mess with. After 45 minutes, Rick's friend got him to calm down. Promise me you'll go back and beg for forgiveness. I'll be fine, Rick said. Now back to himself. Rick went home that night, forgetting the matter. 3 days later, the cashier at the front desk of Ghost Augustine's store was the first to hear that Rick had died in his sleep from a heart attack. 6 months later, another guest who had been on Rick's tour that night called the store to let Ghost Augustine know that their guide Rick was in grave danger. The investigator had reviewed the evidence from that outing and informed the store that the entity they had captured was threatening to kill Rick if he didn't stop. Thank you, the clerk said, but you're unfortunately too late. Rick passed away not long after that night. Ghost Augustine would later stop tours to that building. The owners of the pub wanted to turn the second floor into a living space for themselves. The British pub would change its name as well. It's unknown if the spirit who allegedly killed Rick is giving them any problems. So, I mean, that story, that was reported by a guide named Mr. Ed, and he talked about it on a podcast. But along with my book, I also give what I call the GPS, or Guthrie Paranormal Scale. It's a scale that works from like 0 to 6. It's a way to map out a haunting. I don't really know how people will receive that, but for those who do buy my book, let me know what you think about the idea behind it. Maybe it's something that guides and investigators can kind of give a consistent rating, a consistent rating to show, like, if there are people that want to investigate or people that want to check out a haunted location. Like, for example, maybe it's anybody can go to it. The entities are not overwhelmingly harmful, I guess you could say. But it could take you all the way up to those places that know, like, it should be exorcised, or the entity should be removed. But now that we've talked about that, we will talk about the second story, the thing that washed up on the beach. In St. Augustine, with it being a coastal town, there's always bound to be sea creature stories, from the briny deep. Well, this is one of those stories. And here we go. Throughout the Sunshine State's history, there have been many tall tales of sea monster sightings along Florida's interior lakes. Johnny, the St. Johns River monster, was first reported in 1849 and is said to be over 90 feet long. In Lake Worth Lagoon, not far from West Palm Beach, the trident tail monster has made several appearances and even been allegedly filmed at one point. But there is one sea monster that once graced St. Augustine's shoreline. It was a carcass that has been debated about over the years on what it exactly is. It began the evening of November 30th, 1896. Herbert Coles and Dunham Corder were riding their bikes along Anastasia Island's coast when they happened upon a giant carcass. The thing was half sunk into the sand as the waves ran against it, and the smell was rancid. The boys cycled back to the only man they could think of who would have an idea as to what this carcass was. His name was Dr. DeWitt Webb, the founder of the St. Augustine Historical Society, as well as the city's Institute of Science. He went out to the site December 1st, the day after the boys' report, and he studied the smelly mass. He ran his hand over the blob. The body was hard and rubbery. The thing was almost white, and it gleamed with a silvery glow in the sunlight. The doctor estimated it to weigh at least 5 tons, 18 feet long and 7 feet wide. Dr. Webb concluded that this sea monster was a giant octopus of some sort. There appeared to be 4 stumps that had been eaten by sharks and other fish, and there looked to be a tentacle laying not far away. One Dr. George Grant published his observations on the creature not long after in the Pennsylvania Grit in December 13th, 1896, and as it reads, "The head is as large as an ordinary flour barrel, and has the shape of a sea lion head. The neck, if the creature may be said to have a neck, is one of the small diameter on its body. The mouth is on the underside of the head and is protected by 2 tentacles, or tentacle tubes, about 8 inches in diameter and about 30 feet long. These tubes resemble an elephant's trunk and were used to clutch in a sucker-like fashion any object within their reach. Another tube or tentacle of the same dimensions stands out on the top of the head, 2 others on each side protruding from beyond the monster's neck, and extended fully about 15 feet along the body and beyond the tail. The tail, which is separated and jagged with cutting points for several feet, is flanked with 2 or more tentacles of the same dimensions as the others and 30 feet long. The eyes are under the back of the mouth instead of over it. The species is so badly cut up by sharks and sawfish that the only stumps of the tentacle remain. But pieces of them were found strewn for some distance on the beach, showing that the animal had a fierce battle with its foes before it was disabled and beached by the surf. A fateful storm would later reclaim the carcass briefly before it was washed on Crescent Beach, a few miles down the coast. As the news spread of the giant octopus that washed ashore, several experts believed this corpse to be a giant squid. The body was in an advanced state of decay after all. But then there were others who suspected the carcass to be a giant piece of whale blubber that had been floating its way along the ocean's current. One of these was Professor Addison Emery Verrell from Yale, who was one of the most well-regarded experts of cephalopods in the country at the time. Upon inspection, Verrell believed this octopus was a sperm whale's head that had become detached from its skeleton. Soon the carcass would be hauled off the beach by cart and was a tourist attraction for several years at South Beach on Anastasia Island. Sadly, after this giant carcass of the giant octopus, squid, or sperm whale blob disappeared from the history books. Luckily, there were several samples that were taken and photos that were once thought to have been lost. In 1957, Forrest Lim Wood, a curator at Marine Land, stumbled upon the old newspaper clipping from the time titled The Facts About Florida. In the article, it stated that Professor Varell estimated the once living creature to be 25 feet long and 25 feet wide and 72 feet in length. Then the curator saw the disputes about the creature's actual identity. Wood traced the ownership of the samples to the Smithsonian. Upon further examination, the man concluded that this corpse was indeed a giant octopus, a true sea monster, proof that sailors claimed to see after being on the ocean for months at a time. Or was it? The validity of the creature was questioned again in 1987 when chemical testing was conducted on the blob sample and compared with other compounds in a rotting dolphin, beluga whale, sperm whale, and both giant squid and octopus. The results affirmed that the carcass was a supposed sea monster of lure until the remains were looked at beneath an electron microscope in 1995 and made a mind-numbing discovery. The tissue did not match any known octopus species but was 100% pure collagen. The St. Augustine monster had been part of a whale carcass all along. And that is the tale of the St. Augustine's river monster, or St. Augustine's sea monster. For over 100 years, no one knew exactly what it was. For now. So, I grew up hearing that story. So, it makes you wonder, what, people will think, when looking at some things. But, one more story. And, anyway, like I said, you guys, make sure to check it out. It helps support the channel. And, that money, like I said, it does support these long trips that I do. It goes a long way is what I'm saying. So, I think one more story that we will do, it is titled The Bathtub. The bathtub is the last story, and it is one of the most fascinating. And if you want to go to this location, again, Ghost Augustine has a haunted pub tour, and they go upstairs and they do investigations. So you can see this haunted artifact. So, last story on this feature. There are many ancient buildings in the heart of St. Augustine. One of those former residences is an old colonial home in Florida, which is the Gonzales Alvarez House. The dwelling was built in 1702 for Thomas Gonzales E. Hernandez and his family. In modern times, most of these buildings have either remained a private residence or have become a part of the old city's tourism industry. On the corner of Cordova and Hippolyta Street sits the world-famous Scarlet House, formerly known as Scarlet O'Hara's. The pub is considered by many to be the best bar in St. Augustine, as well as one of its best restaurants. The building is, however, a symbol of one man's broken heart. The year is 1870, just 6 years into the Reconstruction of America. Both the Union and Confederacy are recovering for what was perhaps the greatest loss of human life the country had ever seen. The Civil War. On a plot of land, George Coley is having a home built for his beautiful bride, Marina. The two were madly in love with one another, but with every rose, there is always thorns. George notices that Marina disappears at times, leaving without saying a word. George is looking at the blueprints of what will eventually become the newlyweds' home. But one day, it is said that George overheard two men in the street nearby. He hears that Marina has been seeing a soldier at Fort Marion, which will later be renamed Castillo in honor of the Spaniards who came before. He looked up at the wooden frame as the walls go up and anger begins to seethe within him. He will confront the soldier on Spanish Street, and the two will go to blows. After this brawl, Marina will leave George just as the final touches are made to the building. George will find the love again and get married, but this love will shortly end after. One day, someone noticed that no one had heard from or seen George, so he went to his house. One day, someone noticed that no one had seen George, so he went to his house and knocked on the door, but no answer. Again, the man knocked, but he was only met with silence. He noticed the door was unlocked, so he entered his way through the house. He was immediately hit with the stench of rotting flesh. The odor was coming from the second story. The man walked up the creaking stairs and was met by George as his naked body lay in the tub, festering and waterlogged. Upon examination, George had been drowned. Some believe it was by suicide. Others say it was George's fiancée, who was jealous of her old suitor's new bride. It is said that she ordered her new husband, the soldier, to kill him. At his burial, the home remained in the Coley family until the last one left in 1955. For the next 20 years, the home was boarded up as the rest of the town grew up around it. When the property was purchased to become Scarlett O'Hara's, the owners found that the tub sitting in the cobwebs. Little did they know that their discovery had awoken an invisible presence. For the next few months, both guests and employees alike felt uncomfortable on the second floor alone. They felt as if they were being watched, while the waiters claimed to be poked by something they couldn't see. And some of it was as if someone were breathing hot air down their neck. Pretty soon, the television began to turn itself on and off, with no electrical issues to be found. Waiters would find themselves having to reset the air conditioner over and over again as the machine had a mind of its own. Then waiters were caught with a certified look of terror on their faces, They ran down the stairs and into the streets, refusing to go back upstairs. The shot glass moved, I swear. Are you going to finish your shift or what? Hell no, you can't make me go back up there. I saw what I saw. Then the following waiter would be met with the glasses on the other side of the bar shaking violently. On the outside, people walking along Cordova Street claimed to see a man in 19th century clothing staring down at them. And this unknown entity proved that it could get violent when men cursed in front of women. Many men would later lift their shirts to find huge bruises on their back. George's death would later be found out while doing research on why the paranormal activity was happening. If you go to the Scarlett House, you will find a sign that speaks of his story, and you will also find a warning notice near the bottom saying to be respectful when next to the spot where George died. Even in death, the man was a gentleman who is said to despise profanity. When I lived in St. Augustine, I communicated with him using my K2. It was brief but fascinating. And anyway, guys, there are 13 other stories. The origins of the K2 meter are actually in St. Augustine. That's in the book as well. But anyway, guys, link to the book on Amazon is in the description box. That's also the 2 other books that I have. If you are from my neck of the woods, East Tennessee, don't worry, I didn't leave you all out. My second book is still really good because it still talks about the Cherokee National Forest. But anyway, guys, have a happy Halloween. It's going to be a fun one. Peace.